All right, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. In today's world, being able to roll with the punches is absolutely critical for any organization.
That's for sure.
We're talking about resilience, and for that you need a solid business continuity management system, or BCMS. And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Right. Specifically, we're looking at Clause 7 of ISO 223.13.2020, which focuses on support. Now, this is all about making sure you've got the right resources, the right people, and the right systems in place to keep things running smoothly, even when, well, let's just say things get a little bumpy.
Think of it like this. ISO 22301 tells you what you need for a BCMS, the requirements.
Yeah.
ISO 23333 shows you how to actually make it happen, to really implement those requirements effectively. So today, we're really focusing on the how, particularly when it comes to building that strong foundation of support.
Absolutely. And Clause 7, it really breaks down what you need to focus on. Resources, competence, awareness, communication, and you got it, documented information.
Exactly. That's what we're going to unpack today, one by one. Not just what the standard says, but why it matters and how some of the really top organizations out there are approaching these elements. This is about moving beyond just ticking the boxes and into actually building resilience that works in the real world.
So let's jump right in. Clause 7.1, resources.
On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You need resources for your business continuity, right? But what does that actually mean when we're talking about keeping a business running, no matter what's thrown at it?
Okay, so right off the bat, the standard, it highlights BCMS resources as a category of its own, which I think is really smart.
Oh, interesting. Oh, right.
It's saying, look, business continuity isn't just some little side project you tack on to everything else.
Yeah.
It needs dedicated attention, dedicated resources.
Right.
And this goes way beyond just money. We're talking people, the right people with the right skills.
Got it.
We're talking technology, the tools to back up your data, recover your systems if something goes wrong.
Makes sense.
Even things like physical infrastructure, like, a backup work site if your main office is out of commission for some reason.
Right. Like if there's a flood or something, you've got to be able to operate from somewhere else. So it's not just about hoping your existing systems will hold up.
Right.
It's a deliberate choice to invest in the capabilities that will see you through those tough times.
Exactly. And the really savvy organizations, you know what they do? They look at the cost of not investing.
Oh, interesting.
Because a single day, just one day of serious downtime, that can cost way more than investing in, say, a really robust backup system or a team that knows exactly how to handle an incident.
That's a really good point, yeah, because it's easy to focus on the upfront cost and not think about the potential losses you could face if you're not prepared. So it really is it's an insurance policy in a way.
Exactly, a strategic one.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about Clause 7.2, competence. Now, this seems pretty self-explanatory. It's about making sure you have the right people with the right skills to handle your business continuity. But there's got to be more to it than just that, right?
Oh, definitely. Clause 7.2, it really drills down on this idea that anyone whose work could affect how well your BCMS performs, they've got to be competent to do that work.
Okay, so not just like the core business continuity team, but anyone who might be involved in a response or recovery effort.
Exactly. And this competence, it has to be based on real, solid stuff like education, training, or actual experience in the field. And the first step, the absolutely crucial first step, is for the organization to define what competence actually means for each of these roles.
Oh, so before you even assess if someone's competent, you need a clear benchmark, right? Like what are the specific skills and knowledge that this role actually requires?
Absolutely. You nailed it. Like, think about it. The competence needed to lead the recovery of a critical, financial system that's going to be wildly different from, say, the competence needed to manage internal communication during a crisis.
Right. Totally different skill sets. So the organization has to do that mapping to figure out what those required skills and knowledge are for each role.
Exactly. They've got to be meticulous about it.
Okay. And then what happens if they find gaps? Like what if they realize, okay, we need this level of competence for this role, but the person in that role doesn't quite have it yet?
Well, the standard, it says the organization has to take action. They have to bridge those gaps.
Okay. So what, like specific training programs?
Yeah, exactly. Targeted training, maybe mentoring programs, pairing up someone less experienced with a seasoned veteran. Or even in some cases, you might need to reassign responsibilities, just to make sure the right skills are in the right places.
Yeah, makes sense. So you're not just throwing people into the deep end and hoping they can swim.
Yeah.
You're giving them the tools and support they need to be successful.
Right.
And it's not enough to just have competent people, is it? You need to be able to prove it.
You got it. Clause 7.2, it talks about the need for documented information as evidence of competence. It's about having tangible proof that you've invested in your people and their abilities.
So things like, training records, certifications, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Records of people taking part in exercises and simulations,
Yeah.
even performance reviews that specifically look at how someone performs in their BCMS role. It all builds a picture.
Okay, so you're building a skilled team, and you're keeping a record of that development so you can demonstrate it if you need to. Now let's move on to 7.3, awareness. And this one feels like it's about getting everyone on the same page, right? Like making sure the entire organization understands why business continuity is so important and how they fit into it.
You got it. Awareness in this context, it's really about ensuring that everyone who works under the control of the organization, everyone understands a few key things.
Okay.
First and foremost, they need to be aware of the business continuity policy.
Right.
What are the goals? What's the organization's commitment to resilience? What does it all mean?
Yeah, because it's more than just having the policy document gathering dust on a shelf somewhere.
Right.
People need to actually know it exists, know what the key principles are.
Absolutely. And awareness goes even deeper than that. They also need to understand their own contribution to the effectiveness of the BCMS.
Okay, so how their everyday work, their specific tasks, how do those tie into the bigger picture of business continuity?
Exactly. And they need to understand how improving business continuity performance, how that benefits the organization as a whole.
That's a good point, because when people can see that connection between what they do and the bigger picture, they're going to be more engaged, more likely to take it seriously.
Absolutely. And there's one more crucial element to awareness. People need to be aware of what could happen if the BCMS requirements aren't followed.
Okay, so like the potential consequences.
Yeah, the negative consequences for the organization, for stakeholders, even for their own jobs if business continuity or procedures are ignored or if the BCMS isn't taken seriously.
It's like connecting the dots between individual actions and the organization's ability to weather a storm.
Right.
Awareness isn't just knowing something passively. It's actively understanding why the BCMS is there and how it relates to everyone's work. Now, let's talk about communication, Clause 7.4. I mean, this one's got to be crucial, especially during a disruptive event, right?
Oh, absolutely. Clause 7.4, it really emphasizes that the organization needs to define how communication is going to work around the BCMS. And it's not just about reacting in a crisis, it's about having clear strategies and protocols in place beforehand.
Okay, so what needs to be communicated? Is it mostly about updates during an incident?
Well, it's broader than that. It's about all sorts of information. The business continuity policy itself, the objectives, the plans, the results of exercises and tests, the overall performance of the BCMS.
So keeping everyone in the loop about everything related to business continuity.
Exactly. All relevant parties need to be informed. And then there's the when and the how.
Right.
You need to think strategically about the timing and the methods of communication.
Okay.
Like what's appropriate before a disruption, during a disruption, after a disruption. What channels are you going to use? Email updates, maybe a dedicated crisis communication platform, phone trees for urgent notifications.
Right.
You might even need a public relations strategy involving social media to communicate with external stakeholders. It all depends on the situation and who you're trying to reach.
And then there's the who. Who's responsible for communicating, and who are they communicating with?
You got it. With whom refers to internal audiences like your employees, your management team, and also external stakeholders like your customers, suppliers, regulators, the media. Who should communicate means clearly defining who has the authority and responsibility to share information with these groups.
Yeah, because in a crisis, that clarity can make all the difference.
Absolutely. You don't want any confusion or mixed messages when the pressure is on.
So a well-thought-out communication strategy. It's not just about sending out updates. It's about managing expectations, making sure the right information gets to the right people, both inside and outside the organization at the right time. Okay, finally, let's talk about documented information. Clause 7.5. Now, I know this one doesn't always sound the most exciting, but it's got to be important, right?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. Clause 7.5, it addresses the need for documentation to support your BCMS. The standard, it requires documented information that's mandated by ISO 23001 itself, and then any additional documentation that the organization thinks it needs for its own BCMS to be effective.
So it's not just about creating documents for the sake of checking a box. It's about capturing the knowledge and processes that are crucial for actually running and improving your business continuity capabilities.
Exactly. And this documented information, it serves a lot of purposes. It records your essential knowledge, outlines procedures, provides evidence that activities have been carried out.
Yeah.
It ensures consistency in how you manage business continuity across the organization.
Okay. So the clause also talks about creating and updating documented information. What are the key things organizations need to keep in mind there?
Well, when they're creating or updating documents, they need to make sure everything is properly identified, give it a clear title, a date, a version number.
Okay, so you can track everything.
Exactly. And they need to choose the right format and media, whether it's a written document, a digital file, a diagram, whatever works best.
Right.
And crucially, they need to have clear processes for reviewing and approving these documents.
So making sure they're accurate, up-to-date, and aligned with how the organization actually operates.
Exactly. And then you've got the control of documented information. This is all about making sure the right people have access to the most recent versions of everything and that the information is properly protected.
Yeah, because what good is a recovery plan if you can't find it when you need it?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. The standard, it outlines a few key requirements for controlling your documents. First, they have to be easy to get to, and they have to be suitable for use when and where they're needed. Second, they need to be protected against unauthorized access, accidental loss, any compromise to their integrity.
So digital security measures, secure physical storage, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And then there's version control, making sure everyone's using the latest version of everything.
You don't want teams working off of outdated plans during a crisis.
No, definitely not. So you need a clear audit trail of revisions, a system that ensures everyone's always working with the most current version of every document.
Okay.
And finally, the standard addresses retention and disposition.
So how long you keep different types of documents and how you dispose of them securely when you don't need them anymore.
Exactly.
So documented information in a BCMS, it's not just about paperwork for the sake of it. It's about building a living library of critical knowledge and procedures. It's about making sure that vital information is always accessible, accurate, and protected.
You got it. And with that, I think we've covered Clause 7 of ISO 22313 pretty thoroughly. We've talked about resources, competence, awareness, communication, and documented information.
And as we've seen, those 5 elements, they're not just separate things. They all work together. They support each other. If one of them is weak, it can undermine the entire system.
Exactly. You could have the best plans in the world, but if you don't have the resources, the competent people, the awareness, the communication, and the documented information to back them up, they're not going to be much use when a disruption actually hits.
Right. It's about having that solid foundation in place.
Mm-hmm.
So for our listeners out there, as you're thinking about your own organization or maybe an organization you're familiar with, take a moment to consider how each of these support areas is being addressed. Where are the potential vulnerabilities? What if resources are tight? What if there are gaps in competence? What if awareness is low, communication is unclear, or critical information isn't properly documented and controlled?
It's a really valuable exercise.
Yeah, it's a framework for assessing and strengthening your resilience.
And it's not a one-time thing either. These support elements, they need constant attention, regular review, continuous improvement.
Right, because the threats are constantly evolving, technology is changing, organizations are changing.
You always got to be adapting.
Exactly. So keep that in mind, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.